Out with the old, in with the new. What's going on, YouTube? Thanks for tuning back into another video. Today, yes, the topic is on the Integra. I know it's been quite a while since we've actually done a video on this. Why am I wearing a mask before the video starts? Hope everybody's in good health. I know this COVID-19, the coronavirus or whatever it's called, is affecting a lot of people. So I just want to promote to be as safe as possible and keep your hands clean and breathing apparatus handy when you need one, and just be safe. That being said, the title of this video already gives it away exactly what we're doing. Especially with these cars that we built for the track, that we have a whole bunch of extra stuff going on under the hood. We want to make as much room as possible. We do a lot of things to achieve this. We remove AC compressors, the whole condensers, ABS modules, or the actual pumps and whatnot. A whole bunch of unnecessary things that we don't need when we're drag racing these cars. One of these things that's often overlooked, is the actual radiator core support. Now, if you guys followed the older videos, you know that we've already had this one removed. If we go ahead and open the hood right here, this is the OEM core support, or at least the top portion of it, what's left, that we actually removed a couple of videos ago. That being said, this removes 100%. So to start us off, obviously we have this big core support, which is not only bulky, but heavy, and it just looks really ugly with all the holes. We want to go for the drag type look. Obviously the engine bay is not finished, but stay tuned for next week. This is going to get finished up, and then the week after that, probably painted. So drop a comment if you guys want to guess what color we're actually going with this. No, it's not an OEM Honda color. It's going to be insane, but I want you guys to have a guess on it first. So make sure to take a second right now and drop it in the comment section if you want to guess. And yeah, now we'll get back to the video. So obviously, since that is big and bulky, we want to go with something a little opposite of what it was, which is small and sturdy. So right here we picked up from Lowe's a weldable steel rod. This is 5/16 the size of it, and it's a 3-foot rod. Now to do each side of this, since we're doing two individual ones, we probably only need 2 of these total, just to make sure that we had enough in case I messed up or we wanted to try extra tabs or whatever you'll have it, whatever it is. I went ahead and picked up 4 rods, as well as this flat steel. If you guys have seen my other videos, I use flat steel a lot when making little tabs and whatnot. This specifically is 1/8 of an inch by 1 1/4 inch in width, 1/8 inch wide, and it's like I think 3 foot also. So it's nice just to have some flat steel. We're gonna make some tabs off of that. Another thing that I picked up is some more welding wire. Obviously you guys are familiar with the welding machine that we have here. But that being said, we have extra wiring right there. A couple other things. The fenders and the headlights are obviously off since there's no core support for the headlights, and there was no fenders, just to have a little more clearance when we were doing the engine bay stuff. We're going to be using them again. The headlights are already out, the bumper is here as well, and the fenders are also. Now, something to keep in mind, I might end up doing a 3-piece front end in the future for this, which isn't going to affect this, since what we're doing right now is making a headlight bracket, and the mounting points for the 3-piece front ends, for the fenders at least, they all still have the 3 holes that go on the top to the threaded area on the actual engine bay to hold up the fenders. We're still going to be using that for reference, and obviously it's going to line up with the door panel, or the door itself, the door skin, and it'll line up with the bumper and get the headlights exactly where we want them. Another thing we're going to be using aside from that stuff, since we don't have any fancy pipe benders or rod benders or anything, we're probably just going to be using this little bench mounted vise, and also some acetone to clean up the actual metal that we'll be welding after we get it all cut up and cleaned up. That way there is no oil or grime or anything on there. We'll also need a wire wheel, which I'll get in a little bit, just to clean up the spots that we're going to be welding on, since this is coated from when you pick it up at Lowe's, so it doesn't rust in the store itself. And yeah, not too much. I'm going to go ahead and mount on the fenders as well as the bumper to my best ability, since there's no core support. Try to keep it floating and put the headlights as well, and we'll see you in just a sec. Alright, so we have the front end already taped on. Obviously it's not perfect, but it's close to where we need it to begin with. Over here we have just a metal coat hanger that I'm going to use as like a soft reference, since it still can hold the shape of the skeleton that we want to make, but it is very malleable. It's easy to work with, and it's not going to be an exact model of how we want it, but it'll be close. So I want to get it as straight as possible to mimic the actual rod that we're working with. Doesn't need to be perfect, obviously. Got the coat hanger pretty straight, not 100%, but we got it to kind of how we want it. So this is just under 3 feet, so it's almost what we're working with. Let me see, I think I'll do the pinch right around here. Just gonna bend this. So I would have this come down around there, not that aggressive of an angle. So essentially what we want, this is gonna come down like this, and then it'll come in close approximation to the mounting holes right there. Obviously there's gonna be a little steel piece there to actually have the hole for the bracket. And then the other one is going to go right here. Then I'll have one rod go down there, which is gonna be kind of tight since I have this bulb, but I think I can squeeze it in right there and then have it bolt onto the front somewhere right here. Since there is normally holes right here, but we bonded them up a while ago, so we're not gonna be able to utilize that. So basically, the first one that we wanna do is something like this. We're gonna get the steel rod onto the vise right now and see how we can start bending it up somewhat like this. I do apologize for the cluttered space that I have right here, but right here we have our bench mounted vise. Ignore everything in the back. But basically I marked it with a Sharpie exactly what length we need on the top, and then the bottom we're gonna do as needed. And from the looks of it, it seems soft enough that we can just bend it by hand. I actually have this here for reference. So I can hold it and then bend it to the location, and then we can always play with it afterwards. Right off the bat, something I'm noticing, it's bending about 1/2 inch up of where it clamps onto the vise. Luckily, we can just trim the excess off of the bottom piece, but the bend is gonna be somewhere about 1 inch, like I just said, or 1/2 inch up. So let's see. That should be pretty good actually. Let me go ahead and take this off and we'll go test this on the front of the car real quick. I am in no way, shape, or form a fabricator, and this is my first time doing anything remotely like this. I think we can work with this. I think I might do a little bit of a tighter bend because I want to have, or do I want it like this? No, I'm not going to tuck it too much. I'm going to put it about right there. Remember to push the headlight out. Yeah, I think I'm gonna put it right about right there. Shout out to my boy Tyler, Wide Open Throttle Garage. Hooking it up with the bench drill. I think it makes it so much easier to drill through flat steel. So my man, thank you, brother. I've got the flat steel bolted on right here over the fender itself. It's still gonna have plenty of room to clear the ribs of the actual hood, so we're not worried about that. And then I marked it just a tad below the actual area that needs to crease downwards towards, and we can get that on the vise and bend it the same way that we did the steel rod. And once that's bent down, I'm gonna leave it to about right there, and then we can cut it off. I just wanna keep the extra on it right now so we can grab onto it and actually bend it. All right, so here's a rough cut. I actually just got done with a flap disc cleaning up the surface area of the rod as well as the tab, where I'm gonna tack weld it real quick. And then after I was done scrubbing it off or using a flap disc on it, obviously this is a fresh flap disc. It hasn't been contaminated with any other style of metal, so that's something to keep in mind, very important. I wiped it down with some acetone with just a nice clean rag to get all the little grease or anything that there may possibly be on there, any contaminants out of there. Right now it moved out of place since obviously I'm not holding it with both hands, but with a little magnet I try to line it up as best as my abilities would allow me, and then I kind of mocked up exactly how I want the rod to be. This is basically going to be like that, and then I'll make tabs off of the rod to actually mount the headlights to. So yeah, I'm gonna close this garage right now because I have a light over top. Just got to move that out of the way. And then I'll turn on my welder and actually get a nice little tack weld on there. All right, so we have it almost positioned to exactly how we want it. Plugged in my welder. Oh, almost fell. I'm gonna put it on minimum with not that much wire speed. 1, nothing crazy. I just want to tack it in place first. And for when we actually put the ground on, I actually ended up grinding down a little right there as well. That way it has nice good contact for the ground. I'm gonna push this headlight to the position that it's gonna stay in. It's gonna be right there. And let's see if I'm happy with how the rod is. It's nice and flat on that tab, so I'll have plenty of room to weld on top and on bottom. That's gonna be good enough to put a tab on top, that one as well. Now I'll get a little tack in. All right, that got some good weld on there. Still good right there. We get one more tack on the other corner. All right, that's nice and sturdy. I'm gonna take it off right now and just weld it off of the car. That way I don't have splatter going everywhere and destroying what little bodywork I had already done. But I'm gonna give it another go just to try to put a bead on it. I should really clamp this down somehow. Give me a sec. Because this is not a welding table, although it's not a welding table, we work with what we got. So, that being said, I'm gonna work with what I got. You can tell it's really hot, so it was eating up through the metal, so I wanted to do a little small burst instead of just one continuous bead. Just grind this off, or excuse me, wire brush it off. So it's got nice penetration on the top and the bottom, so it's nice and sturdy. I'm gonna flip it over and do the bottom right now, just so I have extra assurance that it's welded all the way correctly. Now I'm about to cut off the end of that rod since it does finish at that tab right there, and I want to clean it up a little, round it off on the end so it doesn't look bad. And that should be done for, or just about done for that portion of it. Then I'm not gonna make the tabs to support the headlight just yet. I wanna finish a skeleton and actually get a rod down around this area so I can make another tab at the bottom. But that should be done for the top piece right there, so I'm pretty stoked. It is already getting a little bit dark, and a lot of the mosquitoes are coming out, and I like having the garage open when I actually do things like this because of the dust and the welding fumes and whatnot. So after I cut this, I think I might be done for the night. All right, guys, welcome back. This is the next morning for me, same time for you guys. Last night I did mention that I was gonna be making one piece straight down right here. After some consideration, instead of going straight down right here, I'm actually going around. Gonna weld right there and then back under the headlight to the front. It's just gonna look a little bit cleaner. It's gonna look less chopped up, and it'll have a little bit more support in my opinion. That being said, I did have to bend this up since you guys already saw how I bent it on the first one. I didn't record it, but I did end up grinding right here and on the top. That way we have the weld points all ground away and ready for weld, as well as the little plate that's gonna be attaching to the body. That's all ground up. For both pieces, I just have to clean it up with some acetone, get the grease off before I can actually start welding. But essentially, this is going to get attached to the front of the frame right there where I showed you guys there's a little bolt hole, and then it's going to meet up with the top somewhere around right there, and then I'll cut the excess on both sides. I just wanted to show you guys real quick before I start welding it up, but then I'll put it on my tripod right now and give it a few tacks and see how it holds up. Top clamped on with the ground, and then on the bottom I have the magnet holding it onto the plate. This should be ready to weld up. Got my welder plugged in right now. Turning it on. Gonna put the camera on the tripod and get to welding. Like I said, I'm just gonna give it a couple tacks right now, and then we'll do the big stuff after. So like I said, not the prettiest tack welds, but I have it in position. This is the angle that it needs to sit at comfortably. Now I can weld all on the back and all on the front as well. It's pretty hot. All right, there's been plenty of cool down time. I ended up cutting the rest of the excess of the tab right there. I tried rounding it off, but it was really hot. My hand slipped and I cut it at a wrong angle. So this is what I was saying about the bolt earlier. It's nice and comfortable in there. You can fit a socket around or a wrench. You don't have to worry about it not fitting after you weld the rod on, because you kind of want to think in the future. So I'm gonna bolt this back on, and it's already cleaned up right here. I'm just gonna hit it with some acetone to get all the grease off, and we'll be ready to weld the top. All right, so we have the bottom welded on. It's also bolted into place. I have the rod kind of lifted a little bit and then clamped on with the ground right there just to get at the angle that we want. I'm gonna give it 2 tacks for this one. One on the front side, one on the back side, and once it's off, we can cut the excess off of both sides and then weld it all together. So I have it on my vise right now. Obviously bottom mounting point, top mounting point, and this is the excess that we're about to cut off. I could cut it flush, but given that most of the meat for the tacks are on the top, I'm gonna cut it just like probably 1/8 of an inch on top of the tack, probably like 1/4 an inch away from the rod right there for this side. That way I still have that support. Once that's cut off, cleaned off, ground down again, as I'm welding on the bottom, I can do a nice clean grind at the top. All right, so I have it rigged up right here, ground on the back where it's ground off, vice grip onto this so it doesn't burn through the table, and nice and ready to go. Much better. Let me see if I can focus in on the welds at the bottom. So what I'm most proud of welded wise is right down there. The bottom really welded pretty nice. And on the top, remember guys, this was what was all contaminated. I really just wanted to melt the rod down. All right, so I'm gonna cut this at the top and cut that out the side. All right, so we're looking pretty good. I have it mocked up. I have a little flap disc right under the headlight to kind of keep it at the position. And like I mentioned earlier in the video, this isn't an OEM bumper in the way that it's mounted and whatnot. The top is OEM, but the bottom's all messed up, so it's not gonna line up perfectly, but it still has these little reference holes for where the actual top of the headlight has to go in, and most cars actually have something similar. And although we're not judging 100% just by that, we're kind of keeping it into consideration, because I could put it forward and it'll come out of that hole. I want to keep it kind of in that OEM spot. Right here I marked on the rod exactly where I'm going to have to grind down and clean with acetone. As for the bottom, I actually added a little leg right there, and off that leg I'm going to put a little support, so it uses 3 supports instead of just the top 2. Should keep it a little bit stronger and the headlight won't wobble that much. As for how I'm going to attach it from here to here, what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to cut a tab kind of like in a half moon at the corner and then have it come forward right there. As for this, I'll just kind of do something similar straight forward though, since it's not at a curve. On the curve, I just want to have as much adhesion to the rod as I can. All right, here I'll just do a little straight flat steel for like a platform, and should come out pretty good. I'm just gonna grind this down and start cutting out some tabs for it. All right, so I actually ended up tracing out on a much thicker piece. I think this is like 1/4 inch instead of the stuff that we were using for the brackets, just so it has a lot more meat. Since this is a thick piece of rod, I don't want there to be any movement at the end of it or anything, or any vibration. And I traced it out first of all on these little cardboard pieces, and kind of mocked up exactly how I want it. And they're gonna be at a slant right there, so it fits nice and clean, straightforward. And with one hand it's kind of hard. And then at this one, since now that I'm looking at, I should have made the skeleton more towards this way and then out, but just to compensate for that, I don't want it to be any weird angles coming out for the bracket, but this is what I'll be end up doing right there, kind of like a slant right there, curve it in, and then it'll kind of go with the flow of the headlights. So yeah, I traced that out onto the metal tabs that I need to cut out, and I'll get cutting right now on this. I've got our tabs cut out already, and as well they're also beveled so the weld can penetrate well. Then I mounted it on the car, kind of like just held it with a magnet, and used a punch to hit exactly where I want the bolt. Then I looked up exactly what size I need to use so that I could tap it to an M6, and it was 0.196, which is an 5mm drill bit, if I'm not mistaken. So now I got it lined up with the drill press and everything, and the vise to go exactly where it needs to be. Use some nice cutting oil. In our case, we're just gonna use some WD-40, and then get that drilled out, and then be able to tap it. Once it's tapped, we can weld it onto the car. Drilled with the cutting oil, tapped with the cutting oil as well, and now a perfect thread for an M6 bolt. So that's exactly what we're gonna be using to mount the headlights. So that's one tab down, 2 more to go. One's already cut out, the third one for the bottom. I'm gonna do this one first. Guys, I'm adding this in as I'm editing. I'm currently in real time on the driver's side, making the same type of bracket. I didn't use a jig for either side or try to flip how I did it. I actually tried learning what I mistakenly did on this side and redid it correctly on this side. One little tip I have for you guys, when making the tabs from the headlight mount to the actual bracket, make the hole first and bolt it onto the front. So that way it holds itself into place and you can adjust as you're going. This isn't welded up yet. Obviously, I still have to grind down right here to get a good weld on it, but this is being held up by the bolt already. See, it's already threaded in since I drilled and tapped it. Otherwise, I would have just been holding it like this or trying to use a magnet and weld and burn myself and have the angle come out all wrong. Look how much cleaner this looks right here compared to the last one that I did. Because I took my time and I'm using logic. I sat back for a second, analyzed what I was doing, and tried to think of how I could do it more efficiently. Don't rush through the process, guys. On anything, this included. When you have doubts about something, take a second, sit down, think about it in your head, and once you have it clearly in your mind, then you go about doing it. So yeah, that's just a little tip that I wanted to do for you guys, give for you guys, and now you can continue and go ahead on your way. All right, note to self, guys. Microcloth fiber towels with acetone catches on fire very quickly, even if it wasn't close to what you were welding. My God, was that a scare. Anyways, I'm gonna turn that off in a second, but I started welding this side, and towards the end I got a little scared because I'm like, why is everything on fire? So, and I just realized that it's melting plastic, so that's not good either. But yeah, stay safe, guys. Don't weld around chemicals. Okay, all right, we are almost done with the second side right here, or with the first side, excuse me. But with the third tab, we just got done with it. What I found for the third tab, you see how it's like inclined upwards? It's not actually how it would fit flush naturally. That's because I bolted it onto the tab on the headlight first and then tacked it on, which I think is a much better way of doing it now that I look back on it, because it gives the natural sit of how it's gonna sit with the with the actual tab depending on the headlight. So yeah, this one's about ready. I'm gonna do a final mock-up right now just to see how it sits, and then we can get ready to paint this. She is fully bolted on, bottom mount right there, top twos, side on the fender mount, and obviously on the front right over here. It's not the strongest, as in it only has 2 mounting points and they're not fully tightened right now, so it's not the full strength that you're seeing, but this is more than enough to hold the headlights into place. Now, if I had a bumper that wasn't all cut right here, then I would be able to make another couple tabs to the bumper right there. If I end up sticking with an OEM style front bumper, then it's gonna have that. I might make a fresh one and I'll make little tabs going to the corresponding areas. If I go up with like a carbon fiber or fiberglass front end, then I can make an exoskeleton all with the same method, in the sense that I'll be able to, it's a lot of harder material so it doesn't flex. You only need a few mounting points and key parts instead of doing all over the top and how we do it for these bumpers. So yeah, she is looking pretty good. Obviously the bumper has sagged a little bit because the duct tape is stretching, but she is nice and centered in there. And obviously we have the tabs on the headlights from the factory are slotted. So I tried to center the holes and the thread that I made on the brackets as much as I could. That way, if I need adjustment, the headlight can still slide back and forth. It still has that OEM capability to actually slide. And all in all, I think it looks a lot neater than having that big old brace over top, which you're gonna save. Shouldn't be doing this with one hand because I'm scratching things up, but you're gonna save this big old hunky thing to just that. So I think it looks a lot cleaner. I'm gonna take it off the car right now, clean it up a little bit, and give it a fresh coat of paint, and then we'll be done with this side. Just suspended by some zip ties right now onto a little tree so I can give it a nice little spray paint. And we're actually gonna be using the Wrinkle Plus so it gives like a nice texture on it. I've been using Wrinkle Plus a lot. If you guys follow the channel or are subscribed, you'll know that on the CRX, the all-wheel drive car that we have, I actually just painted a bunch of stuff wrinkle and really like how it came out. So that being said, I'm gonna give it a couple coats. It asks for 3 5-minutes apart, heavy coats in opposing directions, the stroke opposing directions after every coat. So yeah, let's get this going. All right, y'all, it is the second night and I am completely done. Man, am I tired. I just wanna say thank you for sticking around for this video. I know it was a little bit of a longer one considering we did a lot. But hopefully it was informative to you guys, and not only for if you're doing it to an Integra or another Honda, the floating headlight, but hopefully you had some nice tips and tricks for any type of learning how to fabricate or something. I find that I always find tips and tricks, even when I'm not trying to point them out, by rewatching my videos or looking over what I've done. So hopefully you guys could pick up on a few things on how to do this at home. That being said, hope everybody enjoys the rest of their evening, morning, afternoon, whatever time of day you're watching this. Today is, I believe, the 30th of March, and as of this morning, I'm officially laid off. So hopefully I'll be doing a lot more videos through YouTube for you guys. I have the time now, and you know, hopefully it'd be good to get some content out to you guys. Hope everybody is in good health. The most important thing, please try to stay socially distant from others, as well as just taking care of yourself. Be clean, and take care of yourself, guys. We'll see you on the next video. Drop a comment what you think down below if you made it this far. Say that you made it this far to the end of the video, because I'll be liking all those comments as well. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.